And here we are. And we come right in with Anne laughing, and look at you. You're just in such a good mood. You're so cheery.
I do my best.
It's good to see you again, Anne. It has been a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the last time we did one of these was the day before I had my little medical issue that put me in the hospital for a while. So it's good to be back. Ta-da! And before we get cracking, I do want to. I can't really apologize to the good folks of the greater Detroit area because there was no way of knowing that this was going to happen. But I'm very sorry that Noir City Detroit, that I was not there for that. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciated the lovely get well card that John Monahan, who puts on that Noir City Detroit Festival at the Redford Theater, he was so sweet to create a big homemade get well card that a lot of the attendees signed for me, and that was great. That really boosted my spirits, and I appreciate it very much. So all you folks who did attend Noir City Detroit, I'm sorry I missed you. We'll see you next time. And I greatly appreciated the get well card. Thank you so much. And now comes DC, which is coming up in less than a week.
Yes.
Well,
and
from the
tomorrow.
time tomorrow. Sorry, tomorrow, and I all systems go, and I should be there for the weekend, and then Foster is coming in to take over for me for the second half of that festival, the Great Foster Hirsch, and I'm going from being completely kind of immobilized this month to moving around a lot in October because I have to leave DC a tiny bit early because I'm flying to LA for Marcia Hunt's memorial service in LA, which is, I know people are going to ask, it's a private affair, so there is no place to go or a time to go there. But I'll be doing that on what would have been her 105th birthday, I believe, October 17th. Wow. So can't say that Marcia got cheated.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So anyway, shall we get rolling here?
Mm-hmm.
I think we got some. I think I've given a gander at these questions, and there's some pretty good ones in here. So
I think so too. So our first one is from our friend Bill in Walnut Creek. 1, will there be a Noir City Christmas this year? And 2, will you be returning to the Castro Theater for either the Christmas show or for the full Noir City Festival?
I am gonna be asked that question when I'm being lowered in the pine box. Somebody at the gravesite is going to yell out, "Are you going back to the Castro?" Not to be an alarmist, that day is not coming anytime soon. I hope, but
we probably should mention that.
Yes, there will be a Noir City Christmas show. It will be at the Grand Lake. We're finalizing those details now. It's either going to be the 14th of December or the 21st of December. We've always done it on a Wednesday, prior to Christmas itself. We find it's a great way to break up the Yuletide pressure of all that kind of stuff. Is like, oh yeah, you're out Christmas shopping, go to the Grand Lake Theater and see a movie. We haven't announced what the movie is, but I know exactly what it is, and we've got it kind of secured. So all I will say is if you have any interest in seeing John Alton's gorgeous black and white cinematography in 3D, I would suggest that you make plans to attend the next Noir City Christmas show at the Grand Lake. That's where I'll leave that. We are not returning to the Castro Theater in January. That will be January, I believe it's the 20th to the 29th at the Grand Lake Theater. People who follow me on Facebook recently saw my post about my statement about the pending renovations at the Castro Theater. And while all of this stuff is in flux, and because the Grand Lake Theater was so great during COVID in allowing me to shoot my TCM show there, and that we did the abbreviated, the abbreviated festival last spring at the Grand Lake, kind of a test drive, which I thought worked extremely well. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay there, and then we'll see. I mean, people who followed me in the Noir City Festival for the past 20 years know that I never, I understand that everything is changeable, but at this moment, I really don't see the point of going back to the Castro Theater as much as it emotionally seems to be at stake there for so many people, which I completely understand. We're just going to, at this point, we're getting a much better show out of being at the Grand Lake. So that's the plan.
Huh?
Okay.
Before we get on the next one, I just want to do a quick recommendation for people. But Tad and I watched this really great series on Netflix called Framed, and it's set in Sicily. And these two guys were brothers-in-laws and have a business together, go to repair a TV. And before they get there, this guy is assassinated. And it takes a little while before they find the body. And then when they do, one of the brothers-in-law is a huge crime fan. He's like obsessed with this American detective show. So he's like, oh no, they're going to think we did it. And so they decide like to clean up all the evidence that they've been there. And
classic noir move. Don't call the police, clean it up yourself.
Exactly. But then, and you find this out like in the first episode, is as while they're cleaning up, this message comes in for the guy on his phone, and it's one of the men's wife who's having an affair with him.
Oh, okay.
And then they realize they're really screwed because now they have a clear motive about why they would kill this guy. And it's hilarious, and it is so fast paced. And it's one of those things where they do like a lot, almost like brick jokes, where they set something up and then it pays off a little later, even when it seems really minor. And it's filmed in Sicily, and it's beautiful. So you get to see a bunch of Sicily as well. And so I just want to recommend it.
So is it an Italian production?
Yeah. It's an Italian production. And evidently the two guys that star are a comedy team.
Fantastic.
They're playing the brother-in-law. So, and it's like Ted and I watched like at least 4 episodes.
And this is the question I always ask right off the bat. So how many episodes are there?
Oh, it's only like 6 episodes.
Oh, good.
Short.
That I can handle.
They're short too. The episodes are really short. They're not hour-long episodes.
Short being,
I don't know, like 30 minutes or so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it just goes. Yeah. It's hilarious.
Okay. I'm definitely going to check that out. I might even check that out tonight because that's my speed. Nothing disappoints me more than finding a show with a great premise that I got to watch this. And then it's like 4 seasons. And each season is like 13 episodes, and it's like, oh my God, I just can't commit. So okay, I'll give you one back. One that I've been watching lately that Kathleen and I have just gotten totally into is on. You have to have Apple TV, but it's called Bad Sisters, and it's an Irish production.
Ted's been watching that.
It's fantastic. It's really, really funny, and it's really dark. And it's about these sisters who decide to save one of their, the clan, who has married the worst man on earth, played by Klaus Bang. If you know the actor Klaus Bang,
I don't think so.
Did you see The Square?
Mhm.
He played the museum director.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have not watched that. The Square.
That Square, you've seen the Australian Square, not the
Yeah,
okay,
but not that one.
not
It's been on my list
the
forever.
Scandinavian Square
Yeah,
that won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival,
I believe
which
it's
is
also in.
also really interesting movie that I liked very much. And Klaus Bang, he's also in the Burnt Orange Heresy, based on the
Oh,
Charles Willeford novel. And up until Bad Sisters, I had liked him, and and now I despise him just because he gives such a fantastic performance in this thing. And he is the movie fans amongst you will immediately recognize when you watch this show that Klaus Bang is doing a James Mason imitation through the whole thing. I mean, it's not a I shouldn't insult an actor by saying it's an imitation of another actor, but he totally does the James Mason voice,
yeah.
like the smooth, sinister voice, and it's just great because so the sisters decide that they're going to kill their brother-in-law to spare their sister any further grief from the worst man of all time. And the gag, of course, is that it proves to be much harder to kill somebody than they realize. And it's funny and how each one is resistant, and then he does something that convinces her to go
This is the
through
way to
with it,
go.
and like we gotta get rid of this guy, so and it's very well written, and it's the woman Sharon Horgan who plays the eldest sister in the clan also co-wrote the script for the whole thing and produced it, and she's fantastic. The whole thing is really, it's very entertaining if you like the squeamishness of like, oh, well, I want him to die so bad, and then like, oh, something goes wrong and he lives another episode. So I recommend that, and I also, just because of the last time we were talking, we discussed it. Then we'll get back to the questions. Everybody, I promise you, we'll get back to the questions. I have not seen Pearl, but I did see X. In fact, in one of my messages to you when I was kind of out of it, I mentioned that I had seen X, which is definitely the kind of movie that I have to watch when Kathleen goes away on a quick business trip, because there's no way that she would have watched that movie with me. No possible way. Anyway, it was interesting. It was pretty good. But I look forward to seeing Pearl, the prequel to X, and then I guess there will be a sequel,
Maxine
with triple X, Maxine with triple X, because obviously this Maxine character is going to get involved in like the 80s porn industry in Los Angeles. So I mean, who doesn't want to see that movie?
Yeah. And I gotta say too, I think that I think you'll like Pearl more than X, because Pearl just completely blew me away. I mean, it's
well,
just
all you have to do is say it's like a horror.
performance.
It's like a horror movie directed by Douglas Sirk, and I'm
Yes,
like,
that was my description.
I'm in. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll watch that. And
Who
I
wouldn't?
appreciated how cleverly made X was, and it's brilliant recreation of the look of 1970s movies, specifically the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which they're imitating the look of that completely. But it was good, and she's terrific. This Mia Goth is really a very interesting actress. I was stunned to learn that she played two roles in X. I did not realize that she was Pearl, the older woman in the film as well. I didn't know that until well after I had watched the movie, so that was kind of intriguing.
Yeah, and like I said, I think too with like I really liked High West, but Pearl was the first film of his that I think really worked on a more emotional level. Like, I love the way his films look, but Pearl, and I think it's because Mia Goth co-wrote it, and I think it shows.
Yeah, I think a lot of filmmakers now, I think it's so because of the cost of digital has brought the expense of making movies down to the point where people can start making feature films much earlier than was previously possible. But I also think it means that people are like really learning on the job. And then they're getting films made and if not distributed, at least they're streaming, and I
Yeah.
mean, and X was, distributed by A24,
Hmm.
which is top of the line now in this country. But I hear what you're saying. It's like you're kind of figuring out I can do this. I
Yeah.
can make a feature film and then maybe your first one won't be that accomplished, but by the time you get to 4 or 5, they'd better be your best film.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes too, like there's filmmakers I think are really good stylistically, but I mean, I think it's the importance of writing, right? And like with Pearl, I just felt the writing was really significantly better than his other films. I mean, not that the other films are badly written, but this is such an incredible character piece, and none of his other stuff has really developed a character that far. But I think the actress co-writing the film
Yeah.
brought that. So I'm really excited about Maxine because I have a feeling she's probably going to be more in the writing process with that one as well.
Yeah,
We'll
I
see.
hear you, and I also think that's true in terms of younger filmmakers working with actors. They don't that they learn the camera before they learn how to really work with actors
Mm-hmm.
and direct actors, and um, it often shows because in the old days a lot of the directors came from theater. Most of them
Mm-hmm.
had some kind of theater background, which is certainly not the case anymore. And it takes a while, I think, to figure out how to not do everything with the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Let the actor do a lot of the work, because if you get a performer who's really compelling, get the hell out of their way.
Yeah, and it's interesting
Let them carry the movie.
because I've been listening to a lot of Better Call Saul commentaries, and they talk so much about that, about letting the actors take the lead, and also Hamlin, Patrick Fabian's character, was only supposed to be the bad guy and maybe do one season, but he was such a good actor that they kept writing his character more and more because he could do it, and they had a big philosophy about that, about letting the actors, and even the editor was saying, you're looking at the performances and what they're bringing.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Anne, because with this new obsession with long form storytelling through the streaming services, actors have never been more important than they are now. And you see that you can do 3 or 4 seasons. And the reason you stick with it is because of the actors. The writers and the directors change. In most cases, they
Yeah.
change episode to episode. It is the actors who are leading the whole thing. And that was certainly true of Breaking Bad I'm sorry, of Better Call Saul, when, Bob Odenkirk was carrying all the weight. And then they realized that Patrick Hamlin or
Fabian. Yeah.
Patrick Fabian and Ray Seahorn were every bit as compelling as Bob Odenkirk, and they developed those characters further. I mean, that's why in Breaking Bad, I find it hard to believe that Jonathan Banks's character of Mike, was conceived as a big a character as he ended up being in both of those shows.
Yeah.
But when you get an actor like that who suddenly connects with an audience and is really compelling, it's only that's the best. That's the people watch narrative stories because of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, and the actors.
Yeah.
And they want to see these actors. I mean, that's it. So anyway,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah. No,
we should start answering
okay.
questions instead of just talking amongst ourselves here.
One last Better Call Saul comment, and I'll stop. which is what's interesting about that show is all the main actors on that show are all theater actors originally.
Yeah.
And it shows.
Yeah. Well, does that count for Odenkirk?
He did live stage. I mean, it was comedy performed.
Because he was like an improv guy. He was an improv
so,
guy.
So he has a stage background too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty
Let's actually, you want to answer people's questions?
Let's do that. Okay.
Okay.
That is the point of this.
That is the point of the show.
But we haven't talked in a while, so it's nice to see you again and talk,
See you too.
I mean, people need to know that like we don't really see each other than when we do this. So
no, it's been great. That's one of the joys of doing this is we have seen each other and talked to each other more since we've been doing this than we've ever really had the opportunity before.
Absolutely. Okay. So who's reading this next one?
You are.
It's me. Okay. This is from Tyler, who notes that Tyler and his friends have been having a classic movie night. I'm going to read this as Tyler, where I usually pick an old movie to introduce to the group since I'm a classic movie nerd. One thing I'd like is to one day do a full night at the movies with an A picture and a B picture, some shorts and newsreels and the like to make it like a theater experience of old. I think I'd like to show a film noir as the B picture. What would you recommend as a good shorter B that would be good for a group whose only other experience with noir is the Maltese Falcon? And then I'll quickly answer Tyler's second question, and then you and I can talk about a good B noir.
Okay.
He asks if the 41 Falcon was a B picture. No, that was an A picture all the way. I mean, it was the only thing that was kind of at that point, at Warner Brothers, Bogart was not completely a leading man yet. I mean, he had done High Sierra, and he was moving toward leading man status. But the Maltese Falcon is definitely the picture that clearly made him a big star. But that was an A picture. I mean, that played the top half of double bills. I've looked that up when it was in San Francisco, and it was interesting how many theaters it played and how popular it was upon its release. It was an A picture. So, Anne, you go first. What's a B, a certifiable B? It has to be I'm not going to get esoteric here because it has to be something that is obviously available, so that Tyler can show it as part of his movie night. What would you pick?
What popped into my head was actually Fly By Night.
Because it's the greatest.
And it's just because it's so exciting and fast paced and stuff. I feel like it would be something if people haven't watched a lot of classic films, that it would really just grab them because it's very much, and plus it has, I think, the best car stunt I've ever seen.
Yes, and it is truly a B movie in the sense that it's you get so much in it. That's one thing about B movies is they very often had an unusual tone because they were throwing everything in. It's like, here's the comedy, here's a musical number, here's the suspense, here's the action scene. They could pack it all in there. Only problem with Fly By Night is you can't find it. I mean, it is not yet available in any digital format. So that's why when I show it, I make such a big deal out of you have to come see this because it's not available. It was a Paramount film, but it's now owned by Universal, and Universal has not put it out in any digital format. I mean, I showed it at the last TCM Classic Film Festival, and we packed the house for that because people had heard me talk about it enough, and they knew that there wasn't any other way to see it. That's a great, perfect choice, by the way. I'm going to recommend, since it's very noir and it's short and it's surprisingly freaky and kinky, I'm going to recommend Night Editor. Yeah.
As soon as you said kinky, I was like, night editor.
Yeah, because it is a true B movie. Janice Carter is great in that, and I think that Tyler was specifically saying, a movie for people who haven't seen this stuff and aren't aware of it. It's fun because it surprises people with how kind of perverse the movie is and how wild she is as a femme fatale. So Night Editor, which is available, it was a Columbia picture, and Columbia put it out as part of their Bad Girls of Film Noir series, and then I think they may have reissued it again as a standalone DVD or Blu-ray or something, but it is available. So that would be my recommendation. I'm sure if Tyler is watching this, I am positive that our viewers are chiming in rapidly now on the Facebook thread with their ideas for what other B movies would be great. But there you go. There are two that you can't miss.
Yeah, and I'll throw in, since mine isn't available on for home viewing, I'll say Wicked Woman with Beverly Michaels. But I know but
I know. I'm trying to think if Wicked Woman was actually released as a B movie.
Oh, was it released as an A?
It may. I'm trying to remember. It was United Artists. I'm trying to remember how long the movie is, because one of my qualifiers for a B film is it has to be under 80 minutes long.
Okay.
And because that was generally how they did it, right? Yeah. I mean, it was going to be less than 80 minutes. If it was longer than that, it's funny. I my buddy Thomas Jane, Tom Jane, the actor, when he made his B noir film Dark Country, and I think it was like 90 something minutes long. And when he found out that B movies were really 80 something minutes long, he actually cut stuff out of the film.
That's awesome.
he wanted it to be like a real B movie. And it was like, the movie's too long. So his director's cut was actually shorter than what he initially turned in. He cut out like 6 or 7 minutes of stuff out of the film.
I'm all for it. Oh, and I just want to say one thing, because when you said the night at the movies thing, you're old enough to remember this, but for Warner Brothers, Leonard Maltin put out these movies. They were called A Night at the Movies, and it was a clamshell with 2 tapes, and it was exactly that, where it was a newsreel on the whole thing.
Exactly that. Yeah, Leonard was sort of a pioneer in that, and obviously, it's always been kind of my thing at Noir City to try to do that, try to recreate that. It became too difficult to try to get the newsreels. When we did Noir City, I think it was 18, whatever the last one was we did, not the last one at the Castro, but the one before that, where it was it was the 50s. I think it was the one where we did film noir in the 50s. Yeah. And then it was an A film and a B film. Yeah. And I really wanted to do newsreels, to put historical backdrop to the whole thing. It was hard to get them all. And we ended up using, Bill Arney ended up doing kind of a newsreel intro verbally. He would say, tonight we're in 1953, and then he would report like the news of the day. Yeah, it was kind of fun. That was good. And I've always wanted to show the noir cartoons. I haven't gotten around to doing that yet. Yeah. The ones where, like at Warner Brothers, where they would do the Daffy Duck cartoons that were very noir, and like Edward G. Robinson and Peter Lorre would be characters in it. Yeah. We'll get around to that someday. Okay, next question.
This is from Eric. Is the Black Book film noir? It out noirs a lot of films in the noir canon.
Yes, I definitely would consider that to be film noir. I've shown that several times at noir festivals and at the TCM festival. I'd say, any movie that makes the French Revolution look like a gangster movie, which is just what it is.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very, very inspired on the part of the producers. Walter Wanger, who, and Anthony Mann, who at that point had done so many of these great noir films. I mean, somebody said it's, but that's the French Revolution. And I'm sure at some point somebody said, yeah, but it's a gangster movie. I
Yeah.
mean, it's all these warring factions trying to take over not
Yeah.
just the city of Chicago, they're trying to take over the country. And that movie is just genius. And William Cameron Menzies, everybody talks about John Alton, but it's really, in addition, it's William Cameron Menzies' production design on that movie that is just stunning. What that guy could do with nothing, with no budget, and how he could create these. That scene where the camera like swings over the gallery where all the people are, where they're having the vote and all that. It's just wow, fantastic movie. So Eric, it does out noir a lot of films in the noir canon. So,
and I'd like to see that again. I haven't seen it in a while.
It's great and great to see on a big screen. Okay, Rachel asks or says that she recently saw The Turning Point in Kansas City Confidential. Would I care to explain how these two films are noir? Okay. She says, I don't get it. Thanks again for your enlightenment and bringing film noir to us on TCM. You're welcome, Rachel. Interesting question. I mean, of the two, I would think that The Turning Point, I could see where somebody would say, isn't that just a drama? Isn't that just a drama? Right? I mean, newspaper reporter, his buddy's the crusading guy who's going to clean corruption out of the town he goes back to where his father had been working, had been like on the police force or something. I don't want to give away spoilers. Kansas City Confidential to me is an easy one because it's a heist movie. And in that case, not all heist movies are noir if they have a sense of humor or they're played lightly or something. But part and parcel of noir is that the bad guys are the protagonists, and that's generally the case with a heist movie where you're rooting for the bad guys to get away with the heist. I mean, John Payne is mistakenly considered to be one of the bad guys, but of course, that's another thing about noir is you find yourself in a circumstance beyond your control, and it's like you're going down if you can't figure out who did it to you. And that's, in some ways, Kansas City Confidential is a little bit like a Cornell Woolrich heist movie in that the protagonist, was the fall guy. And then he decides to pretend he's one of the gang in order to find out who's framing him. To me, that's like a great noir setup. The Turning Point is a little different, and I will be quite honest. I will, continue to say that The Turning Point is a noir film, but a big reason for that is because I like where it fits in the chronology of film noir. Because in the early 50s, so many of what would have been classic noir stories were adapted to talk about the influence of organized crime in America, which was something that wasn't discussed in the 40s. I mean, it was only like when a film like I Walk Alone came out in 1947 that you started to see outlaws becoming normalized. Like Kirk Douglas plays a crook, a bootlegger turned nightclub owner turned businessman. And so The Turning Point is this part of movie history where the culture has to realize that there are crooks everywhere in the way everything is structured. There's a corruption in everything. So I like how it fits in that chronology. And also there's a long history in noir of newspaper men as the protagonists, the newspapermen taking the place of detectives. And, that's certainly the character that William Holden plays in that movie. And it has a very, very noir ending to it. I'm not going to spoil it for people who haven't seen The Turning Point, but it has a much more noir ending than many other films of that period that are, routinely considered to be noir, but don't have endings nearly as bleak as The Turning Point. So hope some of that makes sense to you, Rachel, but that's my rationale. Who is that you that they're coming to get, Anne? I hear a siren. Are they
They're coming after Charlotte?
Oh, it's Charlotte. They finally caught up with her. Okay.
Yeah. They'll never take her alive.
She'll scratch their eyes out. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, you get a long one to read here. You get a long one.
I do. And this is from Sam. I understand that German expressionist films of the silent era were one of the major influences on later Noir films. I recently watched the original 1922 Nosferatu, and I was struck by how many visual noir motifs were present in the film, including Venetian blinds, checkerboard floors, clocks, lattice work, shadows, etc. Do you know if Nosferatu in particular had an especially great influence on later noir films, or was it simply one of many German expressionist films to have such an influence? And what, for that matter, were some other German expressionist films which were seminal in the development of the noir style? The only one I'm familiar with is Count of Dr. Caligari.
At the risk of igniting some huge backlash, I don't know. I mean, I think the what is called German expressionism, I think it gets bandied about somewhat sloppily because they're the expressionistic style is merely when you take the inner emotional state of the characters and you put it on the surface through set design and cinematography and lighting and all of this, it creates this artifice that is meant to depict the inner lives of the characters. This generally only works when the inner lives of the characters are kind of twisted and distorted to begin with, right? Because nobody talks about expressionistic cinema that's light and uplifting when the character is really positive. But I mean, that's the principle of expressionism, right? And I think it was everywhere in the silent era. It wasn't just in Germany, but the Germans were like the darkest, twisted. Their cinema was the darker cinema because of all the cultural forces that were at work in Germany that were going to lead to this big schism in the country and see the rise of the Third Reich and all this stuff, and the crumbling of the Weimar Republic. There was all this tension and disturbance in the culture that manifested itself in expressionism. But you can see, films from the 20s made in England or made in France that have a lot of the same visual style. Joe May made a picture in Germany called Asphalt that's really a classic early example of noir. Anthony Asquith made a picture called The Cottage on Dartmoor that was made in England. That's very much a film noir and has a very noir look to it. And Anne, because you live in San Francisco, you've gone to the Silent Film Festival many times when I've presented films there.
Well, you go even when you're not.
Well, I know, but they always, good for you. They always invite me to come and introduce the ones that seem the most noirish, and those have been from all over the place. Tonka of the Gallows was one that I really loved. That God, I'm spacing. I think it was because I just showed one that was made in Ukraine back in the 20s, and I've shown them from Sweden and from France, and that the one that
what was the one Asquith did? But I think it was Asquith, but it was like on a large part which took place in a film studio.
I'm drawing a blank now.
Yeah.
I know I should have my notes right in front of me. And I'm trying now. I'm really embarrassed that I'm drawing a blank on the great one that we just showed, which was the one directed by Charles Vanel, the French actor. Did you see that one where he plays the miner who's in the accident and he has his face destroyed and he has to wear the mask, and his wife ends up having an affair with a guy in the village? And oh my God, why am I spacing out on the title of that movie? It was fantastic.
I wrote it up for the news. Every time we present something, I always write an article about it for our news page.
It's really embarrassing when you do like a podcast and then you forget the titles of movies. But if people look that up, I mean, you'll see that Charles Vanel, he did not direct many movies. So I mean, that was the one. That was his one big silent masterpiece.
Yeah. And I have a poster up for the Woman Men Yearn For.
Oh, yes.
Which is another, and that's really interesting because Dietrich's not really a femme fatale. I mean, it's really not her fault. These guys are just idiots. But
yes, indeed.
They all become entranced with her, but she's not like doing so. It's sort of a precursor before the femme fatale. These women that had this sort of siren to men, but they weren't like doing it on purpose.
Yes. I introduced that film at the Silent Film Festival, and that's when I discovered the word intrigante.
That's what it is.
It's an intrigante, which was that movie was directed by Curtis Bernhardt, who was a huge director in Germany at that time. Almost on a par with Fritz Lang, not quite, but because he had so many movies that were big hits in Germany back then, and he directed Dietrich in that film before she did The Blue Angel with von Sternberg.
For that,
and where von Sternberg turned her into a full-on femme fatale.
Yeah.
But Bernhardt referred to Dietrich herself as an intrigante, a woman who inspires these bizarre actions in men without doing anything on her own to spark it. It's just second nature. Like that's it. So
well, it's sort of like the woman in Pitfall.
Exactly, just like the Liz Scott character. She's an intrigante. She is not doing anything to make the men behave this way. She's just,
trying to get along in life.
Exactly. So Sam, we appreciate the question. I hope that did something, but I should actually one of these days, I'm just going to write up a list of like because everybody loves a list these days. You got to have a list, like the 10 or 12 essential proto noirs, like especially silent proto noirs would be a good list.
Yeah, I know. And I've got my list of Danish films, which I emailed to someone who asked for it, but I need to remember to post my list of Danish noirs up on the Facebook page, which
that would be good.
Got it written out. That's the easy part. I just need to take care of it.
I need that. Boy, Charlotte is really has been putting on a show today. I don't know if you're aware of this, but she's been all over the room back there. She's climbed on everything so far. So,
well, her sister went to the vet, and then I came home without her because she had to stay at the vet, and I picked her up, and then she smells like the vet. And then while she was waiting for her sister to come home, the Blue Angels were going by. She's not had a good day.
No, cats and the Blue Angels don't get along. Anyway, okay, here we go. Kyle has a question here. And he says, this might require a more general answer about set design. And this is about Kiss Me Deadly. There's a short scene with Ralph Meeker and Strother Martin at the dinner table. 2 pennants are hanging on the wall. One says Los Angeles, but Kyle could not read the finer print. He presumes it's the Rams, but I wouldn't presume. The other pennant says Alabama. Cannot figure that one out. Can't find a link to Bama amongst Aldrich, the assistant directors, producers, Buzz Bizzarities, set designer, art. Any wild guesses? It seems out of place in LA, says Kyle, who is not a Bama fan. He's a Mississippi State graduate. So there you go.
Go Sooners.
Yeah, one thing you have to remember, Kyle, is that everybody comes to California from someplace else, right? So the fact that there doesn't seem to be a connection with Alabama doesn't mean there isn't a connection with Alabama, right? I mean, my old friend Dave Friedman, who was like the biggest sexploitation film producer in the business, was from Birmingham, Alabama. So he could very well have had a Bama pennant hanging on his wall. And also sometimes I wouldn't look too hard for a meaning or a connection in these things. Very often it's just like the prop master is pulling stuff out because, not everything is called out in a script.
Yeah.
The screenwriter will give a basic description of what the environment in a scene is supposed to reflect.
Yeah.
And then it's up to the property master, set decorator, to decide, well, that means, and then they list the things that could be in the scene, and then the property master goes and finds those things, right? And if it just says penance, they're going to pull out of storage whatever penance they have. And if it says Bama, it's entirely up to them whether they think that's meaningless for this, that doesn't work, or they're just going to put it there anyway because it doesn't make any difference to them, Yeah. I mean, and Stanley Kubrick is going to say that won't do. There's no way. And somebody else, another director, and maybe in this case Robert Aldrich, says fine. I mean, I'm sure they're Alabama transplants, I mean, right off the bat, I mean, he says it's a scene between, I can't remember where this scene is set. Like if it's Strother Martin's place, I mean, I can totally believe that Strother Martin comes from Alabama. So, who knows? And also, although I'm drawing a blank right now, I mean, Los Angeles had baseball teams before the Dodgers moved there.
Yeah.
There was Pacific Coast League baseball, just like San Francisco had the Seals and Oakland had the Oaks. I think they were the Stars, the Los Angeles Stars, I think. And I'm sure that wasn't the only team. I know that people are filling the Facebook feed right now with, all the teams that played in Los Angeles, because it always surprised people when they see Armored Car Robbery, the movie Armored Car Robbery, that the police respond to a call of a robbery at Wrigley Field. And people are like, I thought this was set in LA. Wrigley Field's in Chicago. And, there was a Wrigley Field in LA, right? Yeah. The Wrigley family owned a lot of stuff. So anyway, Charlotte has decided that she has to be the star of this episode. Look at that.
Yes,
total cat butt for the audience right there. That was awesome. Tizzy, you better come over here. Charlotte is just completely stealing the show today, Tiz.
I know. Sorry, she's just super stressed out.
Oh, she said, where is Emily? Where is Emily?
Emily's asleep on the couch. You can't see her though, because she's just on that. You see the tip of the white cushion that she's on.
Oh, okay. Oh, so who's at the vet?
It was Emily, and she was there but what happened was.
Oh, so she's home now.
She's home now. Yeah.
Oh, and she smells like the vet, and Emily smells like the vet.
And then there's been the Blue Angel, so that's why she's been so stressed.
Okay.
So
yes,
Charlotte
now that you mentioned it, I can just see the merest tip of her tail over there. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's up
All
on
right.
the couch. Just the
Do
way
you
that-
want to do you want to do the next one, or do you want, since Charlotte is occupying your time, do you want me to read it?
I got
Who's
it.
down?
So this is from Robert. I saw a film noir movie. The leading man never spoke during the entire film. Can you help me with that? What a cool movie. Would love to watch it again. Seems like he was trying to avoid being caught by the police.
I'm going to assume that Robert is talking about The Thief with Ray Milland, where it's not just the police, but he's a agent. He's a commie agent trying to steal secrets in Washington, and the movie is actually directed by Ray Milland.
Oh, wow. I didn't know he directed anything.
No, it's not directed by Ray Milland. It's directed by Russell Rouse. There was something else that Ray Milland did, but Ray Milland is the star. Yeah, and Russell Rouse directed the film, wrote it with Clarence Green, and Herschel Burke Gilbert does the really good score for that. But Milland does not speak through the entire movie, and that was a big selling point of the film. I mean, all the posters and my recollection, I have a 3-sheet for that movie, and my recollection is that the big picture of Ray Milland had like a bar across his mouth. Yeah. Anyway, very interesting film, and very, very hard to find. Boy, I would love to show that on TCM. I've only shown that at the festival in Hollywood years ago, and had Herschel Burke Gilbert as a guest and Beverly Michaels. We showed it on a double bill with Wicked Woman. And both of them came unannounced.
Wow.
Herschel Gilbert lived about 5 blocks away from the theater, and he just walked over, and we had a great interview after the movie. And Beverly came, and I've talked about this before, but she was fantastic, and she just looked great. She was like 72 years old or something, and she just looked great. That was a really great night. Anyway. Okay.
Wait. Yes, your turn.
Okay. Kevin, I'm already so familiar. I call him Kev, who says that he's a new member. Thank you. If that means you joined the Film Noir Foundation, greatly appreciated, Kevin. He wants to know, and Kevin, you are a new member, because we have been asked this question a few times, but it's always kind of fun to go back and revisit it.
Yeah.
Which of today's actors and actresses do you think would fit the noir profile best? So I have to say that early on, when we formed the foundation, we were doing these festivals, it was a very popular thing to denigrate all modern actors as being unable to convey any of the gravitas that the older actors had. Like there's no Robert Ryan, there's no Richard Widmark, there's no Humphrey Bogart, there's no Robert Mitchum, none of these things. I don't know that that's actually so true anymore.
Yeah.
I think there are plenty, like, I'm sure you would think that Mads Mikkelsen is like, he could be, what a great character he would be in a film noir, or he could play a character in a film noir. And, I'm trying to think of who else might work. The jury is out. I know in our last episode, we talked about the fact that they've done a new version of Philip Marlowe with Liam Neeson playing the character. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not totally enamored of that. Kevin cites Cate Blanchett and George Clooney, and I have, having seen Cate Blanchett in Nightmare Alley, I agree with that 100%. And of course, both she and Clooney were in The Good German, which Steven Soderbergh made years ago, a virtually forgotten film already,
Yeah.
right? Did you ever see that?
I've not seen that.
I mean, neither did anybody else.
Oh.
But that was Soderbergh's thing, was I'm going to make an old film with all the, you know, basically it was just with language, modern language, but he shot it with all the old equipment. He actually shot the film with old 35 millimeter Mitchell cameras. This is from the guy who has made entire movies on iPhones.
Mm-hmm.
But that one, The Good German, he wanted to shoot it. I think I read an interview where he said, I wanted to make this picture exactly as Michael Curtiz would have shot this back in 1946.
Oh.
And they used the original equipment and everything. And of course, Clooney and Kate Blanchett were the stars of that movie. And I like George Clooney very much. I have nothing against him. I don't, I don't know that he's like a classic noir leading man. I mean, most people equate George Clooney to Cary Grant,
Mm-hmm.
and Cary Grant didn't make too many film noirs. So,
Yeah.
But I don't know. And anybody else pop to mind that you would say, boy, I'd like to see them do a film noir? I mean, it's not really Leonardo DiCaprio. It's not really Brad Pitt. I mean, I don't see these guys being particularly noir. Even though, let's face it, DiCaprio did Shutter Island,
Which was great. That was a great movie. He was great in that, and that was very
when and it's interesting because when Scorsese made that film, he basically told DiCaprio, like, watch a bunch of Dana Andrews movies, because he wanted him to kind of play it like the way Dana Andrews would have played it, And I thought he was good in it. I actually am one of those weird people that thought Mark Ruffalo should have played the lead. I thought they should have. I thought they should have traded parts. I thought Mark Ruffalo should have been the lead.
Amazing actor. Yeah. He'd be a good noir actor. He really, really wants to do Columbo.
Oh, I could totally see that. No offense, to Peter Falk, who's one of a kind, but yeah, if anybody does it, it'd be Mark Ruffalo.
That's who totally. I want to have do it too. And I loved it because he wore that raincoat in Zodiac, which totally felt like a nod to Peter Falk.
Yeah. But he was playing the Dave Toschi character in Zodiac, so he had the big 70s bow ties, Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo would be great in noir. He's a great actor.
He would be fantastic. And of course, that
I think Ryan Gosling.
Well, Ryan Gosling, I have no problem with him. I know a lot of people, for some reason, I had a lot of people tell me they don't like him at all, but
he's a great actor.
When he does his noir thing, I think he's very effective. When he does his silent, quiet, intense thing from like Drive and Only God Forgives and The Place Beyond the Pines and all those things, I think he's very effective, especially in A Place Beyond the Pines. I thought he was really that's a totally noir character, and I thought he was really good. So yeah, I have no problem with that. I think but see, he's a very versatile actor, and I think when people think of him in like La La Land and what was the one where he had the girlfriend, the I'm drawing a blank now, where he had the inanimate girlfriend.
Lars and the Real Girl.
Exactly. They think of him in those roles, and it's like, oh, this guy can't be a tough guy in movies and blah blah blah. And it's like, no, he's really good.
I'm gonna put another plug in for Half Nelson.
Half Nelson, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
We had a whole Ryan Gosling
last
session
time someone asked
time,
specifically about him, which I think is why he's fresh in my head. Joel Edgerton. I think he's already done a noir. It's called The Square.
Well, no, he has. And thank you for mentioning that, because it immediately brings to mind now you've just opened Pandora's box, because you clearly get actors like Willem Dafoe, who, is fantastic, and Oscar Isaac, who I think is just great. Viggo Mortensen is another one. And Edgerton just did Schrader's new one, The Master Gardener.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's exciting.
Yeah, and which I cannot wait to see. I think that boy, I know that Paul Schrader is having his issues these days health wise, but man, he has really hit his stride. I don't want to say late in the game because we don't know. He may have a lot of time to go,
Yeah.
but he's. I thought the card counter was fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to the Master Gardeners. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's a bunch of people. We ended up with a lot more guys than women, but Annette Bening has done that already. I mean,
Yeah, and she's great. Same with Angelica Houston. He's another
yeah,
one that was really did a
yeah.
good Noir performance. Yeah, and I just wanted to mention too, I don't know if you'd heard this, but Dario Argento has returned to Giallo. He's got a new film coming out called Dark Glasses, and it's gotten really good buzz.
Okay, fantastic. And I know he's out moving around. He was just in LA doing a personal appearance. I saw some posts on social media.
Oh, cool.
That's good. It's good to see the old war horses still kicking.
It's inspiring. Okay, so we talked about
I think we're at number 9.
Here we go.
Number 9.
Stefan from Palm Springs, California. We see so many streaming channels or apps for different genres of film. First, is film noir a genre in your eyes? I am of the opinion that it is. And would you like to see this genre added like comedy, romance, horror, etc., as a sub-filter for existing providers and possibly its own streaming channel? I would. Although the streaming channel Watch TCM has a category of crime, it doesn't list noir, which I feel is different than crime. Did you sense the cat was there? Didn't you just? Yes, there's another cat on screen.
It's cat fanaticism now. Here we go. Tiz, look at your audience. Look at your audience.
Oh, look at that beautiful face.
I don't want people to think I'm forcing her to do anything against her will, but there she is.
In all her glory. She's so
in
pretty.
all her tizzy glory. She's going to sit next to me now, and you don't get to see her, but you just get to know that she's there. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, Stefan, I know that TCM does not have. I mean, you can't win, right? I mean, TCM does not have. They categorize very much the way movies have always been categorized.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they call them crime films instead of noir. Because back in the original era, nobody called them noir. They were called crime movies. And TCM abides by that, but they have given me an entire show called Noir Alley, right? So I'm not gonna hold it against them that they don't call it noir.
And actually, can I just for a second? Also, I want to remind everybody that on filmnoirfoundation.org, we have a TV listings page, and we list out all the film noirs playing that month on TCM.
Which is a great service, and I'm happy that people are acknowledging that, because I have seen your listings and people saying, thank you so much for doing this. This is great. So, Stefan, if you want to find your noir that way, you can. And I mean, this is an I'm not going to say an age-old question, but it's a recurring question as to whether it's a genre or a style. And the answer, honestly, is it's a movement. I mean, that's what I've always said. It's like there were always crime movies, but then they started to be made in a certain way with a certain tone and a vibe to them, and that's when they kind of became noir. And it's so funny to me. Like I have some films coming up on Noir Alley that don't look like noir at all. Like there's a film coming up called Cage of Evil that I think is showing in November or December or something. And it's like a late 50s movie that doesn't look noirish at all. And I show it because in every way, it fits the bill as a film noir, except visually. And so I show these examples so that people can draw their own conclusions about this very question. Like, if it's a style, then you don't think that Cage of Evil is a film noir. But if you think it's a genre, then Cage of Evil, which is about a cop who falls for a femme fatale and ends up stealing money and killing for her, and all of, it's a classic noir story, then it's a film noir, despite the fact that there isn't a shadow in the damn movie. Right? But that's my whole reason for showing it, is to place this issue front and center. And there's no right answer to the debate. It just depends on how you look at it. And I've said a million times, being a writer, I tend to look at it from a writer's perspective and accept that the noir movement made crime stories look a certain way. And that kind of lasted organically for a while. And then a lot of the later stuff that looks that way is clearly referencing these older movies and paying homage to them rather than being that thing organically. So, I mean, there is no right answer to this. But I can tell you that TCM is not going to designate any of the movies on their schedule as a noir, given that people argue, even when I show them on Noir Alley, they argue that wasn't really a film noir. There's one guy who every week on social media, are they ever going to show film noir on this thing that's called Noir Alley? And it's like, whatever.
No, I mean, and I get that sometimes on the TV listings where people say, why was that on the listings? And it's like, okay, my TV listings are a little broad because sometimes it's also stuff that's sort of noir adjacent, or it's just stuff I know. Like I always do the Thin Man movies, which technically aren't noir, but everybody that's into our cage is related to the Thin Man
Of
movies.
course.
So they go up there. And sometimes, if it's a couple of like noir people, I'll look, and I'll be honest about it. But say, I think you guys are going to like this because,
Well, it's like a Rorschach test or something, And for me, it's like a question of, are you the kind of person who's inclusionary, or are you the kind of person who's exclusionary? Because I obviously am inclusive. It's like, I will include this because it has certain noir elements in it. And then there are people who are exclusionary who want to focus on the hardcore, this is noir and nothing but this is noir. So you have to leave all these other things out. Yeah. And my brain, my programming instincts do not work that way, because I'm in a position to show people things. And if those things have value and it requires me to call them noir to get them seen, then I will do that, because I don't think that's a crime against humanity. It's just like, here you go. Here's a movie from Czechoslovakia made in 1965. Nobody making that movie thought they were making film noir, but I'm going to call it film noir because guess what? I have an audience that wants to watch this stuff. And so here's an audience for what I think is a great movie. Nobody is getting hurt by this designation.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question because it kind of came into my mind a second time. It came in there earlier. But about the effect of like poetic realism on film noir, because I feel like there's really an influence there. That's all.
Certainly from French cinema, yeah. I mean, that's what was happening in French cinema that led to what would later be considered noir. I mean, I think that films like Pepe Le Moko and stuff like that were called poetic realism at the time. They weren't called film noir. But now we look at Pepe Le Moko and it's like, that's a film noir. It's clearly a film noir. So
who's talking about Pepe Le Pew? Who's talking about Pepe Le Pew?
No, it's Pepe Le Moko, not Pepe Le Pew. You don't want to. Okay. Number 10. Uh,
Number 10.
number 10. I guess I'm going to read this. Bernardo
Oh.
says, Bernardo has been trying for years to watch Stephen Frears' movie, The Hit, but
Good movie.
no luck in finding a copy or a streaming service. Will we ever show this on TCM? Okay. Well, we'll only show it on TCM if I get to do another neo-noir series. Because then I would show it and I'd be happy to show it. In fact, I'd love to do a night of Stephen Frears movies on TCM. That would be great, you know. But I don't know why that movie is so hard to find. I will tell you one thing that's interesting about The Hit. It's the first movie I ever reviewed as a film critic. There you go. It was short. It was just a capsule, but I did get paid for it.
Okay.
And I like that movie. John Hurt is fantastic in that film. Early Tim Roth.
Mm-hmm.
And Terrence Stamp.
Terrence Stamp, yeah.
And Laura, I want to say Laura Del Sol or something like that, but I can't remember. I never saw her in much else, but she was somewhat memorable in that film.
And that film was on videotape.
It was on videotape, but hasn't made it to digital.
But it never made it to DVD or Blu-ray, I don't think.
That's too bad. I'm going to have to investigate that and see why that is the case. And, as we've pointed out many a time, it's usually a rights issue. There's somebody who is involved in the production, not the production, in the financing of that film that is debating the ownership.
Uh-huh.
Like, and that's generally what happens when these things have, go missing. It's because there's an argument amongst the lawyers and accountants. That's pretty much it. Okay.
This is from Patrick. Are you aware of any plans to write and film the third missing episode of the Chinatown trilogy?
I know there was a lot of talk about that, a while back, but I can't see that happening now. I mean, how would that happen now? Right? I mean, Jack Nicholson is retired from the movies, so
when he's old.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm trying to recall the third one was supposed to be set, in the late 50s, early 60s. I think it was oil.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
I mean, it was water, real estate, oil, where that was Robert Towne's the trilogy, and I just don't think that it's a doable thing now.
Yeah.
I also don't think it's a viable thing because, the two Jakes, which is starting to enjoy a little bit of a revival because people are now watching it for its own sake and not in comparison to Chinatown. So people are finding a lot of stuff that was always good about it. It just isn't one of the greatest films ever made.
Right. Which, it's a high bar. I mean, it really is.
It is a really high bar,
And I liked Two Jakes. I liked it at the time. I thought it was a good movie.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just not Chinatown.
It's not Chinatown, yeah.
And so I don't see who would step up and say, this is a great idea. And you'd have to sell it like it's, Jake's illegitimate son or something.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
At one point, maybe Christian Slater could have played the part because they would have said, oh, yeah, he's Jack Nicholson's son, isn't he?
Yeah.
But I don't think that's happening now. Even Christian Slater is old now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know. It's sad how that works.
It's inevitable. It's inevitable. Okay, Phil in Dedham, Massachusetts wants to know, what are your favorite films of the 1970s?
Film noirs, I think, specifically, right?
Obviously, I would
Yeah.
assume that
Yeah.
that's what he means. Mine would be, well, you know what my favorite film of the 1970s is because we were just talking about it.
Yeah.
Phil's would be either They Shoot Horses, Don't They, or The Nickel Ride. Ooh, good choice there, Phil. The Nickel Ride needs to be resurrected. Followed closely by The Friends of Eddie Coyle.
Yeah, which is a great film.
Yes. And then Phil notes that ironically, although I'm from Boston, the bank at the branch that is robbed in the opening. Wait a second. Oh, he actually banked at the branch that is robbed in the opening sequence of the film. That's what he's saying.
That's very cool.
But Phil saw Eddie Coyle in San Francisco while he was driving cross country in his VW bus. Right on.
That's probably a cool story in itself.
Was he with a dog named Boo when he was doing that? Are you old enough to know that reference, Ann?
No.
Me and you and a dog named Boo traveling in and living off the land. They were traveling around the country in a VW bus.
Oh, okay.
Me and you and a dog named Boo. And I'm trying to remember. I should be able to name the theater at which Phil saw Eddie Coyle, because that was like my prime movie going years.
Yeah.
And in San Francisco, I just can't remember. It might have been the Metro out on Union Street where Eddie Coyle showed. I can't remember exactly. Anyway, favorite films of the 70s, noir films of the 70s. I mean, obviously Chinatown is sort of in a class by itself, but I do like The Nickel Ride, Robert Mulligan's The Nickel Ride, which
I haven't seen that
right here. One of the few starring roles for Jason Miller, who was, Father Karras in The Exorcist.
Oh, I really like him.
Yeah, he's talk about a guy with a noir face. Holy cow.
Yeah, he looks like a noir guy, definitely.
Yeah. And a really, really good writer as well. You know, he also wrote a Pulitzer Prize winning play called That Championship Season. That
Robert wrote that?
Yeah, Robert Mitchum
no
was
idea.
in it. Yeah, Jason Miller, the actor who we're talking about, wrote that play. Yeah, which was also made into a film. Anyway. Any other ones come to mind for you from the 70s?
I really like The Killer Inside Me with Stacy Keach.
The Stacy Keach version, yeah. Directed by Burt Kennedy. That's an unheralded movie. Yeah. And kind of awesome because it was made before the Jim Thompson Renaissance.
Yeah.
In the late 80s and 90s. When everybody started making Jim Thompson things. That one was made much earlier.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this recently, didn't we?
We did actually, because someone was asking us about
Jim Thompson, I think.
Yeah, Jim Thompson. We got into a discussion of Jim Thompson. I brought that film up.
And I thought that Stacy Keach's performance as Lou Ford was like spot on.
Yeah, it's
spot on.
Yeah.
Much more so than Casey Affleck in the later version. Let's see if we can get. Look, can you see that, Tiz? Can you see?
You're
such
such
a
the other
lame-o,
kitty?
Tizzy.
You see the other kitty?
Hi. No, she does. She's not interested. She's
not interested. I know, sweet pea. I know I've had a hard day.
Okay, Tiz. I'm going to do this thing that Tizzy loves. I'm going to flip her over, and she's going to sit in my lap on her back and get her belly scratched. No one can see this. It's a little too intimate for the camera, but she's digging it right now. I also like Night Moves. I kind of like Night Moves with Gene Hackman. I like it a bit more every time I see it.
Yeah.
And although there are some gaffes in it that I have to say, there are some gaffes in that film that are inexcusable, but it's and I do like They Shoot Horses, Don't They? It's good. I think it could have been better, but I'm just being nitpicky.
Yeah, and I like Altman's The Long Goodbye, which is weird because I don't really like Altman. That's like the only film of his I like. Yeah,
that's interesting. I'm going to give a plug here because I know a lot of people hate that movie just because they're such aficionados of Raymond Chandler, and they just despise the fact that Altman turn the whole thing up on its head. That Elliot Gould is not their idea of a Philip Marlowe, but it's still a really good film.
Mhm.
And I just want to today I read in an upcoming issue of the Noir City magazine, Danilo Castro writes a really extremely entertaining article about, this isn't the final title, but we're calling it Stoner Noir, about all the movies that have been kind of stoned noir. Truly, to put a fine point on it, they're stoned detective stories, of which The Long Goodbye is like the godfather of them.
Mhm.
Because even though Marlowe is not a stoner in the film, the whole film has a stoned vibe to it that clearly comes from Altman, who was one of the highest directors in Hollywood.
So to speak.
Dennis Hopper, Hal Ashby, Robert Altman. These guys were stoned a lot of the time.
So they're going to cover then the Joaquin Phoenix movie, I assume too, which the name escapes me. It's based on the Pinchot novel.
Yeah, Inherent Vice.
Inherent Vice, yeah. Oh, and by the way, Joaquin Phoenix would be a great noir actor.
Yes, see, we're coming up with a lot of them now. Well, have you seen the Lynn Ramsey film that he did?
It's on my list. I haven't watched it yet, but I want to watch it because I like Lynn Ramsey too.
I Was Never Here, or You Were Never Here. I Was Never Here.
I think I Was Never Here. Yeah, it's on my just watch list.
Totally noir, completely and utterly noir. As a lot of her movies are.
Yeah. Morven Collar is definitely noir.
And the Kevin movie, we need to talk about Kevin.
I have not been able to watch that because the book really freaked me out.
Yeah, it's an uncomfortable watch, but and there's an actress, Tilda Swinton,
she would be a great noir actress.
She can do anything.
Yeah.
She can.
Yeah,
she has done. What's the movie she did? Julia, I think, is very much a noir where she plays. I think we've talked about that movie on. I think we have, program, yeah.
And didn't she do like a remake of oh God, you're showing it at DC. With Joan Bennett.
The Reckless Moment.
Yeah, I thought was that her? Yeah, I thought she was making a remake of it. Yeah.
And I will watch Tilda Swinton in anything. She is just incredible.
And Ray Seahorn, I think, would be a great noir actress.
Well,
of course, she already is.
she already is. She's also very funny. And,
gosh, she is.
And this is for those of you who aren't Better Call Saul fans.
Oh, sorry.
This of course is.
Know who she is.
Is Kim Wexler, the character of Kim Wexler from Better Call Saul.
Incredible performance.
A very, very noir character who was an innocent who didn't know, who went over to the dark side.
Well, we don't know how innocent she really was, though.
Well, but she was living her life.
She was living a respectable life, but
she was living her life in a state of innocence until she was exposed to Jimmy McGill, and then it unleashed her darker nature. A very, very noir concept.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. I think this brings us to our last question.
Yes. I'm curious. Okay, I'll do it. I'm curious if you could share behind the scenes actions of various departments in the DVD distribution companies. I don't even know this, who released Crime Wave in the lineup of your audio commentaries with James Ellroy, excuse me. When they were available, the antics of Mr. Ellroy raised a few eyebrows among some film lovers, even though I personally was very much entertained. What was the atmosphere of the recording sessions when the shenanigans began? Were there discussions with the producers whether the recording should be shelved or redone? Were there concerns from the executives of any possible fallout which may harm the release sales of the DVD box sets? Basically, all the politics laid out for us to understand what happened during that period. I hope you and Mr. Ellroy will continue to record more audio commentaries when the opportunity arises.
Conrad asked that question.
Conrad, yes.
Okay, a couple of things. I'll answer this question in a couple of ways. I'll answer the specifics of the Ellroy thing, and then some generalities about the recording of commentaries. The two things I did with James. One was done in San Francisco and one was done in LA. And by and large, we're pretty much left alone. The way these commentary things work is, at least the way they used to work, because, the purpose of audio commentaries, this may surprise a lot of people, but the purpose of audio commentaries back when they started to make DVDs was most of the movies already existed on VHS. So audio commentaries were a bonus thing to throw on there to convince people to buy another version of the film that they maybe already owned. And then, this happens, and you'll notice that the special features got more elaborate every time there was a format change.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you may have the DVD, but you need to get the Blu-ray. So they had to pile on a lot of special features on the Blu-ray to make you want to buy the whole thing again, right? And there was always a push to get celebrity type people to do the commentaries, right? So the fact that I asked James if he would do one of these with me, little did I know what I was getting into. They jumped at it. And James, of course, knew exactly what the situation was. And he, of course, was not being paid to do these, right? Because you couldn't afford to pay James Ellroy to do one of those, right? I mean, they don't. And back when I did those with James, I didn't get paid much to do them either. And so he would go in looking for trouble to begin with.
Yeah.
So he just wanted to make it as difficult for the producers as possible, just because that's how James has his fun.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, let's see how they're going to cut this. Let's see if I could say this now, And for the most part, on the Crime Wave, and the Crime Wave one was done through Warner Brothers, and the lineup was done through Sony, which owned the Columbia Library. But these things are very low key. We'd go into a recording studio. James and I would sit beside each other, watching the film on a monitor. The producer would be in the other room. And always, without any question, these are projects that are farmed out by the studio.
Got it.
No one employed by Warner Brothers is actually producing this. They're produced by independent companies who bid on the job, which is one of the reasons why they, at least in my early days, they never paid anything, because the producers would lowball to get the job. And then if you said, I want to be paid X number of dollars, they'd say, oh, it's just not in the budget. Because they'd have to pay it, right? It'd come out of their money. So James obviously did these because we were friends, and it was a way for us to hang out and have a good time. And I'm glad that Conrad thinks they're fun and that we're having a good time. James drove me nuts on the lineup commentary because it was so obvious that you're not going to leave anything. Warner Brothers was tougher than Sony. Sony just put a disclaimer on it saying everything that's being said in this commentary is the opinion of the interviewees and does not reflect, blah, blah, blah. So Warner Brothers was tougher. Warner Brothers cut stuff out. I have the producer who thought it was actually kind of funny. sent me a copy of the original transcript of the thing, which I could probably make copies of and sell online and make money, because the original is like 10 times more scurrilous than what ended up on the DVD. But that's basically how we would do it. And if anybody is ever going to work with James Ellroy, let me tell you, don't try to come off right off the bat like your buddies. That is a big mistake with James. So you don't call him James on first meeting. You don't pull any kind of bro stuff with James, because he will cut you off at the knees and chop your head off and feed it to you. So that's it. I got that's how those were done, and he likes to make the producers sweat a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but we had a good time. We had fun, and James and I should do more together, because it's a good example of how people who don't see eye to eye on things can still get along and be fast friends. Because politically, James and I are 100% opposites of each other.
Yeah.
And but so what? I mean, when it comes down to it, the stuff that really matters, and your friendship and your loyalty and your respect matters more than all that other stuff, which is just kind of blather in a way. So, I don't know what else to say. What else to say about that? Except that those days are gone. Number one, you won't probably hear me doing any more audio commentaries. I mean, I got a TV show, right? I don't need to do audio commentaries. But I do on occasion, like when Kino put out Alias Nick Beale, it was like, oh man, I love that movie. Yeah. I really, really want to do that. But of course, during COVID, it was really hard because, and this is how I'm going to end this show, with this observation. COVID has changed everything, because during COVID, when we had to record our own audio commentaries, just like I did Noir Alley from home for a while, and that's money that the producers don't have to spend in a recording studio with an engineer. I mean, when I started doing commentaries, after a year or two, I really got cranky and complained, and I said, look, it's my expertise that you're using on this disc, and I write these things, and yet I'm not getting paid as much as the engineer who is sitting here in the studio turning the volume dial and setting levels, right? They're getting paid far more money than I'm getting paid. And I said, that doesn't seem right to me, So I started holding out for actual money to do these things. And now it's interesting because they've cut out the engineers and the studios and all that. Now if they want a commentary, it's just like, well, Eddie, you can just record it at home. We know you can do that because we've seen you do it for TCM. Right? So in some ways it's a lot more work, because you're also responsible for the recording, just like we're doing right now. You're responsible for that as well as what you're saying and everything. So but you're not remunerated for that. You don't get paid to be an engineer and a sound recorder and all that stuff is, So anyway, that's thank you for the question, Conrad. I'm glad you enjoyed those commentaries with James. I don't think there will be too many more of those coming down the pike, but you never know.
Yeah. And I got to meet him. He was a really nice guy.
He is a very, very nice guy. We
had a really nice chat. He was super cool.
He is, and he's very, very polite. He is he's been so great to Kathleen,
Yeah.
and he's just a very old school guy. I think James on a personal level, James is a great guy. He rails against society.
Yeah.
Because for all the nonsense and the idiotic stuff that he perceives in society, he'll be happy to let you know about it,
Yeah.
But in a one-on-one basis or as a friend, James is terrific.
Yeah. He was just, yeah. It was, yeah. And we complained about rich people together. So,
Yeah.
which is one of my favorite things to do. So that's why
James has always, from the very early days of the Film Noir Foundation, James was like one of the earliest supporters of the foundation. I mean, he put a significant amount of money into the restoration of The Prowler, which was a favorite film of his, and that's sort of how we became friends, was through The Prowler. I don't know if you were aware of that, but
yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
because he wanted to. He was invited to do some gig at a theater here in California, and he didn't want to do it really, and so he decided to make it tough for them and said, "I'll show up if you book The Prowler." And then they found out that I had worked on restoring The Prowler, or that I'd shown a print of it, and then they said, "Okay, we found it," and he said, "What?" And it's like, yeah, this guy, Eddie Muller, has a, and he says, "Well, I'll tell you what, if you get Eddie with the film, and I'll do it." So that was really like one of the first times we met. We co-presented The Prowler together at the Golden State Theater in Monterey, California.
How cool. I didn't know that.
And yeah, and became fast friends after that. So that's that story. So Conrad, you got even more than you bargained for with that answer. So there you go.
That's why I put it last. I figured that would turn into a longer answer.
You know me so well, Anne. You know me so well.
Okay. Oh my God. This is a really long one. We got excited because
this is like 2 hours long. This is almost 2 hours long.
I know.
Well, I'm coming out of the infirmary to do this show, so it was good. I didn't know how my energy level would be, and it was good. It was it. It's all your fault, Anne. It's good seeing you and talking to you again, and of course Charlotte is looking quite evil in the background right now. She's just kind of staring at you.
Oh, it's a good thing if the camera doesn't focus that far, because her expression is not friendly.
Yeah. So is it close to her food time?
It is close to her food time. And like I said, I just think it was just that combination of her sister being gone for a while. And then the Blue Angels, like she was literally hiding under the table I'm in right now. She was just so freaked out.
Well, Tizzy has gotten down and she's gone on her
merry way.
She's going to start wailing in a few seconds because she definitely wants to eat. So
yeah, they want to eat too. So hopefully we'll be back in 2 weeks. We've been doing really good on that. I know there was a little longer gap this time, but a lot was going on. So hopefully we'll get back on our rhythm thing. Got to figure out also, because when do you go on the TCM cruise?
Kind of the middle of November.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I'll be back on the 18th. No, I have a gig on the 18th of October. I'll be like from the 19th on.
Yeah.
It'll be good. But I gotta at some point, Anne, I'll be doing some of these from the road.
Yeah.
Which
we're getting there.
Is perfectly fine.
Yeah. So hopefully then we should be back in 2 weeks. Hopefully we're back on a regular schedule. We'll both try and be healthy, and we can keep on our schedule. Take good care of ourselves.
I'll be a year older the next time you see me.
That's right. Happy birthday ahead of time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that's it. We have put people through the ringer with this one.
I know, man.
So I hope everybody enjoyed it, and I hope that I have seen some really cool questions come through recently that were not dealt with in this episode. So I'm hoping we'll get to them in the next one. So, and it is a little tricky, isn't it? Because when you do submit a question, it is actually helpful when you say, like, how long you've been watching or hanging with us. Like the fellow who said, I'm a new donor or whatever. That's good because we do get asked the same question in one form or another often.
Yeah.
But I don't mind if it's somebody who hasn't heard the shows or hasn't heard me talk about it before, because this is something that you definitely learn. I'm getting weird lighting again. It's something that you definitely learn, like as a film programmer, is if you showed Double Indemnity 5 years ago, so what? Show it again, because there's going to be people who have not seen it before, or maybe, it's always somebody's first time.
Yeah.
So
And I think
that's why I never get tired of is it a genre or a style question? I mean, they want to know, and although I've answered that question literally 10,000 times, I'll answer it 10,001 times because, it's important.
Yeah. And also, I kind of tend to forget that we've been doing this like 3 years. So it's okay for the same question to come up because we've been doing this for 3 years,
Exactly.
and that we're picking up new people and they haven't heard that answer. So yeah. And it's good to revisit because I know sometimes, our opinions change or we think of other things. So it's not like we have stock answers to things.
Precisely, which is why I try to never do that. I want people should, tell me if it seems like I'm giving the stock answer, let me know, because I don't ever want to do that, which is why I don't really plot out too much of the stuff that I say on this show in advance, because I don't want to do that. I want it to be like spontaneous and and a lot of times my answers change, like look at all the actors that we came up with when they asked like who would be a noir actor, today.
And I don't think they're people we've mentioned before.
A lot of those were people that have not been mentioned before. I mean, we suddenly just started seeing it, and it was like, yeah, all these people could be in a film. Here's my question for people, and we're not taking answers on the air. But I remember when I did that thing with Ellroy, that first commentary, it coincided with the time that the prequel to the Maltese Falcon was released. When Joe Gores had written the book, Spade and Archer.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some reps from a couple of people from Warner Brothers who were kind of hanging around. And I believe that Warner Brothers instantly owned the rights to the prequel because they owned the rights to the Maltese Falcon, right? So they were talking about who would play Sam Spade if they did a movie version. And it was kind of interesting that the name that they used was Edward Norton, that they thought maybe Edward Norton would play this part, which I didn't see at all. But I sure liked Motherless Brooklyn, when Ed Norton did his version of a noir film that he starred in and directed. And he was good at, the 25th Hour, the Spike Lee movie, is kind of a noir.
I could see Ben Affleck playing Spade.
Maybe. Anyway,
no.
We should stop while we're ahead, because people are going to be going, no, under no circumstances, no.
I think I can get some some pushback.
But I'm just telling you what was discussed at the time. Obviously, nothing came of any of that, but who knows? Okay, we got to end, Ann, because the shadows are creeping over my face, and it's going to look weird in a moment.
Hey, say good night, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.